Hello everyone, thanks for joining us again on ITL Voices. I am Pankhuni Malik and I will be your host for today. We would love to know where you're tuning in from, so please feel free to leave a comment in the comment section with your location if you can, and subscribe to us to get an alert when a new episode is available. We hope you've enjoyed the ITL series so far. Today, we have a very special guest with us, Ms. Gina Alexandris, the Senior Program Director of Ryerson's Law Practice Program. Gina is an experienced lawyer, educator, and coach. She completed her Bachelor of Laws from Osgoode Hall School of Law in 1991 and her Master's from the University of Toronto in the year 2012. For over 20 years, Gina has been inspiring and supporting individuals and organizations as they work to achieve their goals. She is currently the Senior Program Director of Ryerson's Law Practice Program, which she has been involved with since the very beginning in 2014. Gina is responsible for ensuring academic excellence and quality of service and program delivery for participants, and outreach to hundreds of contributing members of the legal profession. Now, let's hear from Gina about her life and experiences. A very warm welcome, Gina, to the ITL network, and thank you for taking out the time to chat with us today and sharing your valuable insights.
My pleasure.
Ryerson's Law Practice Program has gained a lot of traction within the ITL community, and many are pursuing this route as another means to satisfy their prerequisites for the LSO licensing. The big question is, why the Law Practice Program? What makes it so attractive to ITLs?
Thank you. I think the reason that it's attractive to ITLs broadly, or specifically, but also anybody in a licensing program more broadly, is because of the nature of the experience that it offers. So with regards to the law practice program, our constant comment is we are work, not school. You've left school behind. All of you have done school at various stages in various organizations in various places. We're no longer school. So we are a simulation of a work environment. The first 4 months is very much getting you the experience, the exposure in a safe environment, in a simulated way, to client meetings, to things that you may not have done in law school, and within the context of a small, private, online law firm in Ontario. And then in the second half, of course, you get the opportunity to practice that and to actually implement what you've learned within a placement. So we can get into details about the placement. And yeah, the first 4 months really is that simulation. And so in a safe place where we have simulated clients, they are actors, but nobody's really losing a job. Nobody's really losing money. Nobody's really going to jail. But you're certainly practicing that, and you can make your mistakes. You can develop those skills in an environment where you'll get feedback. You'll build your network. You'll get the exposure and experience. And you can then start feeling more confident before you move into the 4 months of the second half, which is the work experience, the work placement.
That's quite interesting because it gives candidates an experience to actually have interpersonal relationships with clients, which law school doesn't necessarily give us.
That's one of the things that we hear constantly, that very little bit of client interaction within law school, wherever the law school is internationally. And so this gives you the chance in some of our files to have that exposure.
All right. We have a very dynamic legal market here in Canada, and the harsh reality is that it's difficult to get an articling position.
So I think there's a couple of things to say. You're absolutely right. It's a dynamic legal market in Canada. The one thing I do want to say to your members is that the law practice program specifically is an Ontario licensing program. So some of my comments have to be restricted to the Ontario market. If you're interested in other markets, really you should be looking at the licensing programs in that jurisdiction. We're a very jurisdictional based country when it comes to legal regulation. And so I do want people to understand that the LPP is very specifically an Ontario licensing program. So in terms of the market here, one of the things that I'd say about Ontario is that there's such a diversity of opportunity. You can be in small firms, large firms, mid-sized firms, in in-house counsel roles, which we have had quite a bit of an uptake in terms of opportunities for our candidates to have placements within in-house roles, within organizational roles, government departments as well. And so I think when you think about what an opportunity for experience is, whether it's articling or whether it's the LPP in the second part, really be broad in what you're thinking, what your opportunities might be, what you might be considering. So I've had people, for example, say, I only want to do fill in the blank, ABC, real estate, or I only want to do litigation. I only want to be in a firm that size is 50 plus. I only want to be in the GTA, the Greater Toronto Area. And what we oftentimes get people to say is, step back. What is this period of time for? This period of time is for you to get licensed. This period of time is for you to develop skills. It's for you to develop a network that you may or may not have. So be a little bit broader in your thinking so that you can step into a role afterwards that, that can continue to help you develop. Your focus is on developing skills. Your focus is on building your network. Your focus is on getting licensed and having the confidence and the ability to move forward in a career in Ontario. And I think the other comment that I'd want to make in terms of the law practice program and the other route, both of which might be applicable to everybody. But in terms of the law practice program, somebody recently made the following comment, and I'll let you think about it. We have about 300 candidates every year. And what that means is your network of potential future colleagues is that much bigger than any other articling opportunity that you can find. You are with a firm of 4 to 6 people. We have 2 different firm rotations, plus there's the ability to interact with others. And if you don't have a large network, don't discount the colleagues that are part of your cohort as future colleagues, the person you're going to call if you have a conflict, the person you're going to call if you have a question down the road. The other thing is the mentors. You have 2 mentors with each firm. So you get a mentor in the first couple of months, the mentor in the second couple of months. We have assessors and trial advocacy advisors. So you're coming up against people in the profession who have experience on a very regular basis. This is just in the 4 months of the training before you move out into your into the work experience, where again you get the ability to participate with people in a placement for the full 4 months. So that opportunity to develop your network as well as develop your skills on a pretty broad base, I think is probably among the benefits of the program.
Thank you so much. I believe what you're saying is look at the bigger picture, don't look at licensing, look at a legal career as a whole.
Absolutely, absolutely.
That's really great advice. Thank you. The Law Society talks about developing 14 different professional skill sets. How do you help in brushing lawyers in the making with their lawyering skills, such as enhancing client management, practice management? How are they graded in the fictitious real world of the LPP?
So the one thing that I want to comment on, remember, as we talked about, the LPP, especially in the first part, is a simulation of a work experience. So we're no longer school. So when you talk about grading, I want to get that language out of people's minds. Grading is very much a school thing. And if you're coming to the LPP thinking about grades, then you're not going to have the right mindset. So here's what we do. For any of the people who are listening who have been in a work environment, how are you graded at work? There are professional development opportunities. There are performance assessments. How else are you graded? By the work that you might get from a supervisor or not? By a client referring somebody back to you or not? By a client saying you've done really great work? So these are the types of experiences that we're trying to get you to become more comfortable with. When you're out in practice, you're not going to get an A or an 80 or a 70 or a 50% on your work, but rather you're going to get feedback from somebody. You're going to get referrals from somebody. You're going to get return clients. That's what you're looking for. So how do we do it? The candidates work on a variety of different files. Some of the work is their own. Some of their work is in collaboration with their firm members, their group. And the feedback that they get, there's sort of 3 or 4 different types of feedback. So one would be where there's no actual feedback from a lawyer, but you get a model answer. So you get to compare your work to somebody else's. When you're in practice, you're going to have to develop that skill of looking at your work and saying, is this good compared to a precedent that I've seen or something that I've gotten from somebody else? So that's one way. The second thing is you're going to get feedback from your mentor. So your mentors will see probably about a quarter of the assessments or deliverables that you have, and they'll give either feedback. In the early days, it's feedback. Later on, they'll be assessing. I'll come to the assessment in a second. It's that performance assessment. Third, we have 2 weeks within the 4-month program, one in October, one in December, where the files reach a certain milestone. So for example, there's a bail hearing in the criminal file. There is an examination for discovery in the civil matter. There might be a negotiation in the family matter. And we bring in outside assessors who will, again, review. You'll conduct the simulation of whatever the experience is, and the assessors will give you assessment in that instance. So what are assessments? Rather than 80%, 60%, 40%, our assessments based on the skills that you just outlined, the 14 professional skills, and what the Federation of Law Societies has indicated are the skills and competencies required of the incoming lawyers. You're either developing, you're either meeting the expectations, or you're exceeding the expectations. And we don't look at each individual deliverable, but rather we step back and take a look at the full 4 months. So if you had a really bad client interview one day, it's not the be all and end all, because you're probably going to have several other ones, and we'll step back and see if you had a bad one the first day, and by the third or fourth one, you are now meeting or exceeding the expectations. There's a development. We're expecting you to not do that great initially and do much better by the end. We're looking at the entire commitment of the entire performance over 4 months. So think about it when you're at work. How does your supervisor review your work? Of course, they look at the individual things that you're doing, but then they're putting it together to see how that full performance has been from the beginning through to the end, okay?
You've already touched upon this, but what factors should aspiring candidates, particularly ITLs, consider while making a choice between the LPP program and articling?
So there's a couple of things that I'd say here. One of the things that is critical is whether it was during the pandemic, before the pandemic, or after this pandemic, our program is virtual. So except for initially we had a couple of weeks where we were in person, we're no longer doing in person. Therefore, I know that people think that everybody is very interested in working remotely. Not everybody actually understands what that really feels like, or you have to have a discipline to be able to do that. So being comfortable with technology, being comfortable with working remotely really is critical. In the second part, when people go to their work experience, most of those will be a placement in Ontario in person. During the pandemic, there was some hybrid where it might be remote from home and some would be in person. But in the first 4 months, you're all working remotely. So think about your ability to be disciplined for yourself to meet the expectations. Have the setup that you need. If you've got children, for example, do you have childcare available? Because even though you might be at home, you're still going to be on from 8 in the morning to 6 in the evening, and anything can come your way that's a file related work that you're going to have to do. So technology, working remotely from home are things to consider. The other thing that I would say is the following. With our program, you have the benefit of getting experience and exposure to a variety of different practice areas, legal practice areas. One of the things that I think is a benefit for the LPP is that if somebody's not quite sure what they want, or if they want to get experience across a number of different areas, our program allows you to do that in the first 4 months. I've had so many people who've said to me, I never wanted to touch fill in the blank, real estate. And by the end of it, they're actually working in real estate and loving it. When we get the candidates exposed to a real estate file, a wills and estates file, an immigration file, a civil litigation file, a family file, business file from start to finish, and a criminal file, And in addition, when we build their in-house counsel perspective from the program that we do with in-house counsel, and then when we also build their advocacy skills through the trial advocacy program, all of those are experiences and opportunities. So here's the other thing. If you are willing to gain that experience and expand your abilities and your experiences, wonderful. If you're very, very focused and you think, I only want to fill in the blank, this might not be the program for you then. This might not be the thing to do. And the other thing that hopefully we'll come up with a little later is it is a full-time program. So it's a job. It's a simulation of a job in the first half, and you really need to be able to commit. So those who succeed are those who are able to either focus their attention in the training component. We all juggle, right? We're all juggling life, whether that means kids or parents or your own illness or something. We're all juggling, but we do have to meet the expectations and the demands of the program. So being able to do so, I think, is really critical for us.
That's true, because it's very interesting how these are little things that you don't expect to experience in a work environment, because when you're in law school, you're so focused on the law, and then they sort of hit you suddenly out of the blue when you enter a legal work experience environment. Thank you. How would you say, Gina, that the pandemic has affected the program? You mentioned it has always been virtual. So has there been a considerable change?
So you're absolutely right that last March, when the world started working remotely, here's a funny thing. Our candidates in the first half were always working remotely. And what we saw was that when the pandemic hit and more people started working remotely, law firms who had LPP candidates almost didn't know what to do. And we found some of our candidates helping them adjust to working remotely. They were already sort of trained working from home, figuring out the systems that you need in place. You know, our candidates use Google Docs all the time, or Google Drive all the time for collaboration, or the Clio system. They had been using Zoom before Zoom, or WebEx was the other program that we used. And so our candidates were really, really helping some of the lawyers that they were working with adapt to the new reality. Fast forward now a year past this pandemic, and here's what I would say about the program and the industry. We used to say, I'll give you a very simple example. There's two simple examples that aren't that simple. We are a professional organization, so we expect people to dress appropriately, dress according to the work that they're doing. Before, when we were doing this, we'd always say suit. You know, you have to have a blazer, and at least from this part up when you're on a Zoom call. What we've seen over the pandemic is that there's been a little bit of a lessening or a recognition that, okay, maybe you don't need a suit jacket every time. We still maintain, if you're meeting with a client by Zoom, we still want you to throw on a blazer or dress professionally. But that's one example where the pandemic and the work from home of the world has injected a little bit more of a casualness, if you will. In terms of technology, our candidates were always using technology. What we found is that more and more lawyers are starting to talk about the same conversations that we're having. In our program, together with the cases that I mentioned, one of the things that our candidates are expected to do as a firm is come up with a business plan. So as you said before, in law school, very few people think about what it's like to set up your own practice. Our candidates are expected to think about the financials, think about marketing, think about what they'll need as expenses, think about which clients are they going to serve, what's their goal. And what we have found is that in the pandemic, as you think about how you're operating for clients' interests, more and more people are actually looking to the LPP and saying, oh yeah, I remember there was a conversation about that by the LPP before, lawyers and non-lawyers alike. So our whole focus pre-pandemic, during pandemic, and post-pandemic has been not on the client, not on the candidates. Our focus is on developing skills for the purpose of helping future clients. So really we think back from the client first. It's not what does the candidate need. It's not what does the LPP future lawyer need. Ultimately, we're looking, what do those clients need in terms of knowledge of their legal team, experience of their legal team, including technological experience. And so when we start focusing on, why are we all lawyers? Why are we all going out there to practice? They're actually helping a person or an organization. And if you don't take that individual or that organization's needs and work backwards into the training, then we're really not doing a disservice. So the pandemic only adjusted that client need a little bit. We've always been focused on that.
Okay. You worked with ITLs for a few years now. Would you say that the market has changed a lot or changed in what way since you started working with ITLs? And what tips or advice would you give to ITLs seeking positions in law firms going forward?
So yes, I think there has been a change thanks to organizations like yourselves and a few other organizations that are putting forward the work of the ITLs, right? So when I first started, after I left Osgoode, working there for several years, I started at the U of T and I started something called the Internationally Trained Lawyers Program. And at that point, there was very little understanding or awareness of who ITLs were, what they were bringing to the fold. They'd gone through a different experience. And so most employers would say, I'm not sure about that, let's leave it. I'm not going to lie and say that that's changed 100%, but there certainly has been an improvement. And one of the things that is really beneficial, so our program, we have half roughly that are ITLs and the other half who are Canadian Law School grads. The more and more that we build our alumni basis, we have now 1,600 lawyers who are out in the province of Ontario. Many of them are ITLs who are showing Ontario lawyers that, a different experience, a different background, a different pathway to licensing in terms of my experience versus your experience actually benefits the profession, benefits the overall public. So I think there's been, the dialogue has been moving ahead. Is it where we absolutely need it to be? Not yet. I wish I could say it was, but not yet. There's still some people who, and this is my description to everybody who's listening, the path that most lawyers in Ontario have experienced has been the traditional route of articling. So when you are, if you think about it, the LPP, we're only in our 8th year. So 8 years of LPP and 60, 70, 80 years plus of the other pathway. If you are in a decision-making position and that's the experience you've had, and you're really busy and there's so much else going on that, do I really need to learn about something new? Most people, unfortunately, don't want to learn something new until they have to. So what we do, for example, when we're out there talking to lawyers in Ontario for either bringing them on as mentors or bringing them on as an employer in the second half, we're educating the profession across the province about a different way of thinking, a different way of doing things. So don't be disheartened is the first thing that I would say. If you hear 5 no's or 10 no's or 20 no's, that's okay. Keep going. And I think one of the comments that I'd want to tell everybody is be prepared to hear no a few times, but then be prepared to also let others know what it is that you bring to the table. Don't discount what you've done in the past. Don't eliminate it from your resumes. I've heard people say, oh, I should eliminate my experience, my 10 years experience in another jurisdiction. Well, no, why would you eliminate that? But also don't think that that's going to be the only thing people are going to look at. They want to make sure that you have an understanding of Ontario law or the provincial jurisdiction that you're going to be in. So how do you convince them that you have that? I'll give you one simple example. When people are in our program and they're applying for the second half, the work experience, sometimes some of them forget to put the simulated experience that they have in that first half. And we say to them, for many people, this is your only experience with Ontario family law or with Ontario civil litigation. Include it. Let people know that you've drafted a statement of claim. You have written a notice of application. You have done an affidavit of documents. You have closed a real estate deal in an Ontario matter. Yes, it's on a simulated basis, but that language, that experience has been there for you. So don't discount what you've done in the past, but also don't forget how to better position yourself to convince somebody, give them the evidence of what you now know.
Thank you so much, Gina, for your time today and for speaking with us about your experience and about the program. I'm sure this episode will be very helpful for our viewers.
My pleasure. If anybody has any questions, lpp@ryerson.ca, where we look forward to answering any questions. Good luck to everybody and all the best to you. Thank you.